The 0 Point Revolution: How to Turn Life's Lowest Moments into Your Greatest Comeback. Picture this. You're standing in the ruins of what you thought was your life. Maybe it's a career that imploded, a relationship that shattered, or dreams that crumbled to dust. Everyone around you sees failure, but what if I told you that you're actually standing at the most powerful point in human existence? What if this moment, this 0 Point, isn't your ending, but the secret launching pad that every great success story begins with? Welcome to the 0 Point Revolution, where we don't just start over, we start better. Welcome to Ground Zero. Hello, and welcome to what might be the most important conversation of your life. I'm here to tell you something that might sound impossible right now. The moment when everything falls apart is actually the moment when everything becomes possible. My name is irrelevant. What matters is that I've been where you are. I've stood in that place where the future looks blank, where the past feels like a collection of mistakes, and where the present moment feels suspended between regret and fear. I've watched my carefully constructed life collapse like a house of cards in a windstorm, and I've discovered something that changed everything. The 0 Point isn't a dead end, it's a doorway. For the next 45 minutes, we're going to embark on a journey together. Not a journey back to where you were that would be settling for a life that clearly wasn't working. Instead, we're going to discover how to use this moment of apparent emptiness to build something extraordinary. We're going to learn why starting from scratch isn't a punishment, it's a privilege that most people never get. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. This is about understanding the revolutionary power of the 0 Point and learning to wield it like the incredible tool it actually is. Chapter 1. The Gift of Ground Zero. Let me tell you about Maria. 3 years ago, she was a successful marketing executive with a corner office, a 6-figure salary, and what everyone called the perfect life. Then, in the span of 6 months, she lost her job due to company restructuring, her marriage ended after 15 years, and her teenage daughter decided to live with her father. Maria found herself at 43, living alone in a small apartment, wondering who she even was without all the titles and roles that had defined her. Maria had reached her 0 Point, that moment when all the external structures that held up your identity come crashing down. Most people see this as a disaster. Maria initially did too. She spent weeks in what she calls the gray zone. Not quite depression, but a sort of emotional numbness where nothing seemed to matter. But here's what Maria discovered, and what I want you to understand. The 0 Point isn't the absence of everything, it's the presence of pure possibility. Think about it mathematically. 0 isn't nothing. 0 is the point from which all numbers are possible. Negative or positive, infinite or finite, everything begins from 0. In life, the 0 Point is similar. When all the predetermined paths are closed, when all the old strategies have failed, when all the familiar structures have collapsed, that's when you're finally free to choose any direction. Maria realized this during what she calls her 3 a.m. revelation. Unable to sleep, she was making a list of everything she'd lost. When she started making another list of everything, she was now free to choose. For the first time in decades, she could decide what mattered to her without considering her husband's opinion, her boss's expectations, or society's definitions of success. The 0 Point strips away everything that isn't essentially you. It burns away the false selves, the compromises, the paths you took because they seemed safe or expected. What remains isn't nothing. It's the pure core of who you actually are, finally free to express itself authentically. Sarah, a former corporate lawyer I worked with, put it perfectly. I thought losing everything meant I had become nothing, but I realized I had become everything I was meant to be, just without all the stuff that was covering it up. This is the first revolutionary insight. The 0 Point isn't a tragedy, it's a liberation. Every great transformation in history began with someone willing to embrace the 0 Point and see it not as an ending, but as the most powerful beginning available to humans. Chapter 2. The Archaeology of Your Authentic Self. Once you understand that the 0 Point is actually a gift, the next step is what I call archaeological work. digging through the rubble of your former life to discover what's actually worth keeping and what was just borrowed from other people's expectations. Let me share the story of James, a 38-year-old who worked in his family's construction business for 15 years. When the business failed during the economic downturn, James felt like he'd lost not just a job, but his entire identity. He'd never questioned whether construction was his passion. It was just what was expected, what was available, what seemed practical. In his zero-point moment, James started asking questions he'd never had permission to ask before. What did he actually enjoy doing? When did he feel most alive? What problems in the world genuinely bothered him enough to want to solve them? Through this archaeological process, James discovered something surprising. His favorite part of construction wasn't the building, it was the problem solving, the spatial reasoning, and especially teaching younger workers. This led him to realize he'd always been drawn to education, but had dismissed it as impractical. 2 years later, James is now a high school math teacher who uses construction projects to make geometry come alive for his students. He makes less money than he did in construction, but he told me, "I wake up excited about my day for the first time in my adult life." The archaeological process involves 3 key excavations. First, excavating your natural interests. What did you love before the world told you what you were supposed to love? What subjects, activities, or types of problems naturally capture your attention? Maria discovered that she'd always been fascinated by how different cultures solve similar problems, something she'd never had time to explore while climbing the corporate ladder. Second, excavating your core values. Strip away what you think you should value and identify what you actually value. James realized that his core value wasn't financial security, which is what drove him to stay in construction, but rather the growth and development of potential, both his own and others. Third, excavating your unique strengths. Not the skills you've developed to meet other people's needs, but the natural abilities that feel effortless to you. Sarah discovered that her real gift wasn't legal analysis, was the ability to help people see conflicts from multiple perspectives, which led her to become a mediator. This archaeological work takes time and honesty. You're not looking for what sounds impressive or what seems practical. You're looking for what's true. You're digging for the authentic self that's been buried under years of adaptation, compromise, and external expectations. The beautiful thing about doing this work at the 0 point is that you have nothing left to lose by being honest. When everything else has already fallen away, there's no point in pretending to be someone you're not. Chapter 3. The Architecture of New Beginnings. Once you've excavated your authentic self, it's time to become an architect. But here's the crucial difference. You're not designing a life to impress other people or meet external standards. You're designing a life that fits the person you actually are. Let me introduce you to the concept of intentional architecture, building your new life with the same thoughtfulness that an architect brings to designing a home. You consider the landscape, the purpose, the resources available, and the people who will inhabit this space. Consider David's story. At 45, his restaurant failed after 8 years of operation. He'd always dreamed of being a chef, but the reality of running a restaurant, the business management, staff issues, and financial stress had sucked all the joy out of cooking. At his 0 point, David could have simply tried to open another restaurant, but instead, he practiced intentional architecture. First, he identified his core purpose, creating food experiences that brought people joy. Then he looked at his landscape. What resources did he have? What had he learned from his failure? What did he now know about himself that he didn't know before? David realized that what he loved most was the creative process of developing new dishes and the intimate experience of cooking for small groups. The solution he architected was completely different from a traditional restaurant. He started offering private chef experiences and cooking classes from his home. He serves 8 people maximum, creates custom menus for each event, and teaches others the techniques he's passionate about. David now makes comparable money with half the stress and complete creative freedom. More importantly, he says, I remember why I fell in love with cooking in the first place. The intentional architecture process involves 5 key elements. Foundation, your core purpose. This isn't a mission statement written to sound good. It's a clear understanding of the impact you want to have in the world. Maria's core purpose became helping people navigate cultural bridges, which led her to start a consulting firm for companies expanding internationally. Structure, your natural rhythms. When do you do your best work? How do you prefer to interact with people? What kind of environment helps you thrive? Sarah discovered she's most creative in the early morning and most collaborative in the afternoon, so she structured her mediation practice around these rhythms. Materials, your available resources. This includes not just money, but skills, relationships, experiences, and knowledge. James leveraged his construction background to become the math teacher who could build what he was teaching, making abstract concepts concrete. Systems, your support networks. Who are the people who see and support your authentic self? What communities do you need to be part of? How will you maintain accountability to your new direction? Aesthetics, your personal style. This is about creating a life that feels beautiful and authentic to you, not what looks impressive to others. David's intimate cooking experiences might not look as impressive as owning a large restaurant, but they feel beautiful to him. The key to intentional architecture is remembering that you're not trying to recreate someone else's blueprint. You're designing something that has never existed before. A life specifically created for the unique person you've discovered yourself to be. Chapter 4. The courage to build. Understanding yourself and designing your new life are crucial steps, but they mean nothing without the courage to actually build. This is where many people get stuck. They know what they want to create, but they're paralyzed by fear, uncertainty, or the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Let me tell you about the night that changed everything for Maria. 6 months after losing her job and marriage, she had a clear vision of starting her own cultural consulting firm. She had the expertise, the concept, and even a potential first client. But she was terrified. What if I fail again? She asked herself. What if I'm not as good as I think I am? What if I can't support myself? These questions kept her researching, planning, and preparing, but never actually starting. The breakthrough came when she reframed the question. Instead of asking, what if I fail? She started asking, what if I don't try? She realized that staying stuck in analysis was already a form of failure. It was failing to honor the person she discovered herself to be. This is what I call builder's courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to build despite the fear. It's understanding that the biggest risk isn't failure. It's never finding out what you're capable of creating. Builder's courage operates on 3 principles. Principle 1. Progress over perfection. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. James didn't have a teaching certificate when he decided to become a teacher. He took 1 education class while still working construction. Sarah didn't know how to start a mediation practice. He began by offering to mediate disputes for friends and colleagues for free. The goal isn't to have everything figured out before you start. The goal is to start figuring things out by doing. Principle 2. Experiments over commitments. Think of your early efforts as experiments, not permanent decisions. David didn't immediately quit trying to open another restaurant, started cooking for small groups on weekends to test whether he enjoyed the intimate format. This removed the pressure of getting it right and allowed him to learn what actually worked. When you frame new ventures as experiments, failure becomes data rather than defeat. Each experiment teaches you something about what works, what doesn't, and what adjustments to make. Principle 3. Identity follows action. You don't become someone new by deciding to be different. You become someone new by acting differently. Maria didn't feel like a consultant when she started her business. She felt like someone pretending to be a consultant. But with each client project, each problem solved, each success, her identity as a consultant became more real. This is crucial to understand. You don't need to feel ready to start building. Readiness is something you develop through building. Let me share a technique that helped all of these people overcome their initial paralysis, the next small step method. Instead of focusing on the enormous gap between where you are and where you want to be, you identify the smallest possible step you can take today toward your vision. For Maria, the first small step was sending one email to a company she thought might need cultural consulting. Not a perfect proposal, not a polished presentation, just one email expressing interest in helping them solve a problem she knew she could solve. That email led to a conversation, which led to a small project, which led to a success story, which led to referrals, which led to the thriving business she runs today. The path from 0 point to authentic success is built one small step at a time. Each step builds confidence, competence, and momentum. Each step proves to you that you are indeed capable of creating something new. Chapter 5. Navigating the rebuilding process. Building a new life isn't a linear process. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when you question whether you made the right choice. Understanding how to navigate these challenges is crucial to long-term success. 6 months into his teaching career, James hit what he calls the reality wall. He was exhausted from lesson planning, overwhelmed by classroom management challenges, and making significantly less money than he had in construction. His family was questioning his decision, and he was questioning it himself. "I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake," he told me. "There were days I thought about going back to construction. At least I knew how to do that job." This is what I call the valley of uncertainty, that difficult period after the initial excitement of starting over has worn off, but before you've developed full competence in your new direction. It's the most dangerous time for people rebuilding their lives, because it's when most people give up and return to familiar but unsatisfying patterns. The key to navigating this valley is understanding that it's not a sign you've made the wrong choice. It's a normal part of the growth process. Every person who has successfully reinvented their life has walked through this valley. Here are the essential strategies for surviving and thriving during the rebuilding process. Strategy 1. Expect the learning curve. When you start something new, you're a beginner again. This can be humbling when you're used to being competent, but it's temporary. James reminded himself that he had 15 years of construction experience, of course. Teaching felt difficult in comparison. The solution isn't to quit, but to be patient with the learning process. Set realistic expectations for your timeline. Most career changes take 2-3 years to feel fully established. Most new businesses take 3-5 years to hit their stride. This isn't failure, it's normal development. Strategy 2. Create support systems. The rebuilding process is too challenging to do alone. You need people who understand what you're going through and can provide encouragement during difficult moments. Sarah joined a group for new mediators where she could share challenges and learn from others' experiences. David connected with other food entrepreneurs who were building non-traditional businesses. Maria found a mentor who had started her own consulting firm years earlier. These support systems provide 3 crucial elements: perspective, reminding you that your challenges are normal; encouragement, helping you stay motivated during difficult periods; and practical advice, sharing strategies that have worked for others. Strategy 3. Celebrate small wins. When you're building something new, progress often feels invisible. You need to consciously acknowledge and celebrate incremental improvements. James started keeping a success journal, where he recorded moments when his teaching made a difference: a student who finally understood a concept, a parent who thanked him for caring about their child, or a lesson that went particularly well. On difficult days, he would read these entries to remind himself why he made the change. Strategy 4. Adapt without abandoning. Your initial vision will need adjustments as you learn more about yourself and your new field. This is evolution, not failure. David's original plan was to focus only on private chef experiences, but he discovered he loved teaching cooking classes even more. Instead of seeing this as getting off track, he incorporated more teaching into his business model. Maria initially focused on helping American companies expand internationally, but found her real expertise was in helping international companies understand American markets. The key is distinguishing between adapting your methods and abandoning your purpose. Your core purpose, the reason you made the changes hold, remain constant, but how you express that purpose can and should evolve. Strategy 5. Maintain perspective. Remember why you started this journey. You weren't trying to create the easiest life possible. You were trying to create an authentic life. The challenges you face in building something aligned with your true self are different from the frustrations you felt living someone else's expectations. As James put it, teaching is hard, but it's the right kind of hard. Construction was also hard, but it was the wrong kind of hard. I'd rather struggle towards something meaningful than succeed at something meaningless. Chapter 6. The compound effect of authenticity. One of the most remarkable things about rebuilding your life from the 0 point is how the effects compound over time. When you're living authentically, aligned with your true values and natural strengths, you don't just improve one area of your life, you improve everything. Let me show you what I mean by returning to our protagonists 3 years after their 0 point moments. Maria didn't just build a successful consulting business. She discovered a confidence and sense of purpose that transformed her relationships. Her daughter, who initially was angry about the divorce, now tells friends she's proud of her mom for becoming herself. Maria is in a relationship with someone who knows and loves her authentic self, not the person she was trying to be in her marriage. James didn't just become a good teacher, he became a leader in innovative education. His construction-based approach to teaching math has been adopted by other schools, and he's been invited to speak at education conferences. More importantly, he says his relationship with his own children improved because he was no longer coming home frustrated from work he didn't enjoy. David's intimate cooking experiences have evolved into a small empire of food-related ventures. He's written 2 cookbooks, hosts culinary tours of local farms, and teaches cooking classes at a local culinary school. But the biggest change, he says, is internal. I used to wake up dreading the day. Now I wake up excited about what I'm going to create. Sarah's mediation practice has grown beyond her expectations, but what surprises her most is how much more present she is in all areas of her life. When you're not constantly fighting against who you are, you have so much more energy for everything else. This is the compound effect of authenticity. When you align your work with your values, your natural strengths, and your genuine interests, you create a positive feedback loop that enhances every aspect of your life. Here's why this happens. Energy multiplication. When you're doing work that feels natural to you, it energizes rather than drains you. This means you have more energy for relationships, health, personal growth, and other pursuits. Maria found she had energy to take up salsa dancing, something she'd wanted to try for years but never had the energy for when she was forcing herself through corporate life. Skill acceleration. When you're working in your area of natural strength and genuine interest, you learn faster and perform better. James became an exceptional teacher much more quickly than he might have, because teaching combined his natural abilities with his passion. This creates a virtuous cycle of success, building on success. Relationship enhancement. When you're being your authentic self, you attract people who genuinely like who you are, rather than who you think you should be. Your relationships become deeper and more satisfying because they're based on truth rather than performance. Opportunity magnetism. When you're excellent at something you're naturally suited for, opportunities multiply. People notice authentic excellence and want to connect with it. David's unique approach to cooking attracted attention from publishers, culinary schools, and other food professionals in ways that running a traditional restaurant never did. Internal alignment. Perhaps most importantly, when your external life matches your internal truth, you experience a sense of peace and wholeness that affects everything else. You're not constantly managing the stress of pretending to be someone you're not. The compound effect is why the 0 point moment, as painful as it feels, is actually one of the greatest gifts life can offer. It forces you to stop living someone else's expectations and start living your own truth. And truth, it turns out, is not just more satisfying, it's more powerful. Chapter 7. Sustaining your new life. Building a new life is one challenge, sustaining it is another. As your authentic life begins to take shape and find success, you'll face new temptations to compromise, new pressures to conform, and new opportunities that might pull you away from your core purpose. 2 years into her consulting business, Maria was offered a high-paying position to return to corporate marketing. The salary was double what she was making as an independent consultant, and the company culture seemed more enlightened than her previous employer. For about 5 minutes, I was tempted, she told me. The money was appealing, and part of me missed the security of a regular paycheck. But then I asked myself, what would I be giving up? She realized she'd be giving up the freedom to choose her clients, the variety of projects that kept her engaged, the direct impact she could see from her work, and the satisfaction of building something that was entirely hers. The salary increase wouldn't compensate for returning to a life structure that didn't fit who she'd become. This is a common challenge for people who have successfully rebuilt their lives. The temptation to return to familiar but limiting patterns, especially when those patterns come with attractive short-term benefits. Sustaining your authentic life requires ongoing vigilance and conscious choice-making. Here are the key strategies. Strategy 1. Regular life audits. Every 6 months, Maria does what she calls a life audit. She asks herself, am I still aligned with my core values? Am I still growing in ways that matter to me? Am I still excited about the problems I'm solving? This isn't about perfection. Some seasons will be more aligned than others. It's about staying conscious of whether you're drifting away from authenticity and making corrections before you're too far off course. Strategy 2. Protecting your core boundaries. Identify the non-negotiable elements of your authentic life and protect them fiercely. For James, it's having summers off to spend with his family and pursue personal projects. For David, it's maintaining creative control over his menus and keeping his events small and intimate. As you become more successful, people will ask you to compromise these boundaries. Success in an authentic life means learning to say no to opportunities that don't align with your core values, even when they seem attractive. Strategy 3. Continuous evolution. Your authentic self isn't a fixed destination, it's a continuously evolving expression. Sarah's mediation practice has expanded to include conflict resolution training for organizations, and she's considering writing a book about her approach. This evolution feels natural because it grows from her core purpose rather than abandoning it. Stay open to how your authentic expression might evolve, but be wary of changes that move you away from your core purpose and values. Strategy 4. Building community. Surround yourself with people who know and support your authentic journey. As you become more successful, you'll encounter people who want to change you, use you, or pull you back into conformity. Your community should include people who knew you before your transformation and celebrate your growth. People who are on similar journeys and understand your challenges. And people whose own authenticity inspires you to stay true to yourself. Strategy 5. Remembering your why. Keep connected to the deeper reason you chose authenticity over security. David keeps a photo on his desk from his restaurant's final day, not to remember failure, but to remember why he needed to change. Sarah has a letter she wrote to herself during her 0-point moment, describing her hopes for what her life could become. These reminders help you stay connected to your deeper motivation when external pressures try to pull you off course. The goal isn't to create a perfect life. It's to create a life that feels true to who you are. That life will still have challenges, setbacks, and difficult seasons. But they'll be your challenges, aligned with your authentic path, rather than someone else's idea of what your life should look like. Conclusion. Your 0-point revolution. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to understand something profound. You haven't just learned about starting over, you've learned about the most powerful force available to human beings. The ability to reinvent yourself, to align your external life with your internal truth, to create something meaningful from apparent emptiness. This is uniquely human. Every great advancement in human history began with someone willing to embrace their 0 point. Every innovation, every social movement, every breakthrough in art or science started with someone who was willing to let go of how things were supposed to be and create something that had never existed before. Your 0 point moment, whether it's happening now or waiting in your future, isn't a punishment or a mistake. It's an invitation to join the ranks of people who refused to settle for lives that didn't fit who they really were. Maria, James, David, and Sarah aren't extraordinary people. They're ordinary people who were willing to do something extraordinary. They were willing to live authentically. They were willing to endure the discomfort of not knowing how things would turn out in order to discover what they were capable of creating. You have that same capacity. You have that same opportunity. Your 0 point, whether it's a job loss, relationship ending, health crisis, or simply the growing realization that your current life doesn't fit who you've become, is your invitation to revolutionary change. The process isn't easy. It requires courage to face uncertainty, honesty to excavate your authentic self, creativity to design a life that fits who you really are, and persistence to build that life one step at a time. But the alternative, continuing to live someone else's expectations, is far more difficult in the long run. Here's what I want you to remember as you embark on or continue your own 0 point revolution. Your 0 point isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of your real story. Everything that came before was preparation, everything that comes after is creation. You don't need permission to start over. You don't need approval to live authentically. You don't need anyone else's understanding or support to begin building a life that feels true to who you are. You have everything you need to begin. Your experiences, both positive and negative, your natural strengths and interests, your capacity for growth, and your ability to make choices aligned with your values. The world needs what you have to offer, not the compromised version of yourself that you've been showing up as, but the full, authentic, unrestricted version of who you really are. Your 0 point revolution isn't just about changing your life, it's about claiming your life. It's about taking responsibility for creating a life that reflects your values, engages your strengths, and contributes to something larger than yourself. The revolution begins the moment you decide that authenticity is worth more than security, that meaning is more valuable than conformity, and that becoming who you're meant to be is more important than staying who others expect you to be. Your 0 point is calling, your authentic life is waiting, your revolution starts now. The only question remaining is, are you ready to answer the call?